Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on graphite today. This is a sector I've covered since 2014, and it's likely to start heating up with some recent news here. We will be talking to ePower Resources CEO James Cross. Now, during today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook for the company. Then we'll take some questions. We'll get to as many as we can. Please type your questions into the chat box at any time. Now, before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this ePower Resources webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to its forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of the corporate presentation, which can be found on the company's website, e-powerresources.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should really rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on ePower Resources. Now, I do think this timing of the webinar is perfect because on Friday, China announced that it would restrict graphite exports, citing national security reasons. And this is major news. It certainly caught a lot of attention. It really underlies the risk of security of supply these days. China controls the graphite mining, processing, and anode production industries. It is anticipated to produce about 60% of global natural graphite this year, according to Benchmark Mineral Intelligence. And this policy should hamper the purchase of graphite feed for anode producers, such as those in South Korea and others outside of China. China also accounts for about 93% of global anode capacity. And that's not likely to change much over the next decade or so. What is changing is the anode capacity. It's about 1.8 million tons per year this year, and that is expected to quadruple to about 6.8 million in a couple years, doubling again by 2030 to about 12.9 million tons per year, and then almost doubling again to 20.1 million tons per year by 2030. So that is a 22% compounded annual growth rate for graphite. So this means that China is going to continue to control who gets access to batteries and who does not unless something changes. And that might prompt the Western anode supply chain to accelerate its build. In the meantime, this news could support graphite prices, especially if some panic buying sets in, and this should support some of the the graphite companies. So with that said, why don't I turn the floor over to James Cross to speak about ePower. James.
Yeah, thanks, David. ePower Resources, we're listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the symbol EPR, and we're in the business of developing graphite resources, especially for the emerging electric vehicle market. A couple of statistics about graphite. Dave mentioned one of them. About 63% of global production comes from China. And each single electric vehicle contains roughly 50 to 100 kilos of graphite for a normal sized car. When you get into the larger cars, it can be something like 120 kilos of graphite. So it is the largest material component of an electric vehicle battery. And graphite forms a battery has two sides. It has the anode side and the cathode side. The anode side is made almost entirely of graphite, and the cathode side is the metals. It's things like nickel, manganese, and cobalt. So without an anode, you don't have a battery, and there is no substitute for graphite in the anode material or in anode material. So you absolutely have to have graphite if you're going to have batteries. We're currently focused in the province of Quebec, and I will just a little history about the company. We formed the company in late 2018, and the purpose of forming it was really because some of our very early shareholders, we started this as a private company back in October of 18. Early shareholders said to us, what can we do in resources around electric vehicle batteries? So the first thing we set about doing was looking at the material components comprising batteries and tried to determine which one would be most likely to face a supply crisis soonest. And the answer we came up with was graphite. So, and now it looks like we're really getting there. To give you an idea of what makes graphite so exciting, it's really the supply and demand picture. If you look at global supply of graphite and look where it comes from, China produced in 2021 63% of graphite. And then after that, you've got Madagascar, Brazil, Mozambique, and India. And those five together comprise 90% of the world's graphite production. And number 6 on the list is North Korea. So, and you just heard, as Dave said, that the Chinese have just put export restrictions on natural flake graphite. And in order to export it from China, you're going to need to get what they call a special export license. Now, I don't know what that entails, but in a communist country, I imagine it's not good. One of the most powerful statistics around demand for graphite is if you look at the North American market, if you look at the 5th bullet on the left side of the screen, in 2021, North American battery manufacturing capacity stood at 56 gigawatt hours. In 2026, it's estimated to be 600 gigawatt hours. So that's a 10-fold increase in really another 2 years and 2 months from now over 2021 levels, which theoretically means they're going to need 10 times as much graphite as they used in 2021 in North America alone. And by 2031, it's estimated that production capacity for batteries will be 1 terawatt hour, which is 17 times what it was in 2021. Now, there's been more news around this, and more factories or construction of more factories announced since this statistic was published by Benchmark Mineral Intelligence around this time last year. Volkswagen announced that in St. Thomas, Ontario, they're going to build a factory of 90 gigawatt hours, which is really more than there was in North America's entire production capacity in 2021. This one factory will be capable of producing in 1 year 1 million electric vehicle batteries. And remember, an electric vehicle battery has somewhere between 50 and 100 kilos of graphite in it. And this factory will be the largest factory of any kind. And I believe it will even be the largest building in all Canada. So there's been additional new construction announced. And Benchmark Mineral Intelligence analyzed the graphite market. If you look at the right side of the screen on the 4th row, you've got the statistics for natural graphite. In 2022, production of graphite was 1.1 million metric tons. By 2035, they estimated the world is going to need 7.2 million metric tons. That equates to 97 new world-class sized graphite mines have to go into production worldwide. And world-class size, they're calling it 56,000 tons, but call it 50,000 tons per year of production capacity would be considered world-class. Now, we see all these factories going up all over North America, and Europe is in the same boat, really. And where is the graphite going to come from? And it is a bulk material. So first, you'd prefer to source it somewhere near where you're going to use it for manufacturing. And if we look at North America, take the 3 countries in North America, Mexico has a tiny amount of graphite production from artisanal sources. It's something like 2,000 or 3,000 metric tons, which really is, a very small fraction of 1% of global production. So there's very little production coming from Mexico. The US has absolutely none, but massive battery manufacturing capacity is being erected as we speak. Canada has one small producing graphite mine. It produces about 9,000 metric tons a year. And remember, world class was like 56,000 per year. And it's in Quebec, and it's reportedly also very near depletion because it's been going for a long time. So the supply and demand picture around graphite is in some ways the perfect storm. Now, we looked at this and said, okay, great. We love graphite. How are we going to make money on this? And how are we going to use leverage to make money on this so that we can hopefully produce exponential returns for investors? And the strategy we came up with was we want to stick to the part of the supply chain requiring very little capital, because we don't want to risk a lot of capital. We don't want to build a $300 million plant. We don't want to go into manufacturing or anything like that. Instead, what we do as a business is conduct research to identify graphite exploration and resource development targets. And then we secure a mineral claims land package around those. So, and that could be through acquiring the claims from someone else or by staking the claims, which means we just apply to the government. And if we're fast enough, they give it to us. And if someone else is faster, they give it to them. But we've developed a nice land package already, which I'll show you in a moment. And then when we have that land package, we want to delineate and develop graphite resources in the ground and show their depth, grade, tonnage, flake size distribution, and mineability. So, and then we want to de-risk the project as much as possible and make it as turnkey as possible so that a manufacturer of batteries can come in and buy it from us because they're desperately going to need it for the factories they've spent billions building. All these major investment banks have allocated billions of dollars of capital. I forget how much that Volkswagen plant was, but I think it might be 10 billion Canadian dollars or something like that. When you spend that much money to build a plant, you might throw a few $100 million at a graphite deposit to make sure that plant isn't just going to be sitting there. So our plan is to delineate and develop those resources in the ground, de-risk the project as much as possible, make it turnkey so that we can monetize it and sell it to one of those manufacturers or more than one at convenience store prices, meaning emergency prices. You know, if you go out for milk at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's going to cost more than if you go to the supermarket during the day. Our mineral claims or our mineral properties are both located in Quebec. For this presentation, I'll just focus on our flagship property, the Tetepisca property. It sits in what is known as the Tetepisca Graphite District in Quebec. And that district is important because it is the highest grade known graphite district in all North America. And to give you an idea of how high, the typical graphite mine globally will produce graphite at a grade of somewhere between 2% and 7% graphite. Now, that means that 2% to 7% of the rock is graphite, and the rest is either waste or maybe a byproduct if you're lucky. Grades in the Tetepisca Graphite District of resources already in the ground currently average about 14%. So it is a very rich district, and it sits only 215 kilometers north of Baie-Comeau, Quebec, which is a port at the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. And you can access the properties from Baie-Comeau by driving on a major highway, number 389. And then the last 50 or 60 kilometers are on Class 1 logging roads, which are engineered roads, not paved, but engineered to accommodate big logging trucks. So they're roads capable of handling heavy equipment and designed for exactly that. Baie-Comeau, which you can see on the map here, is also a site recently chosen back in January by a consortium of companies to build. And one of those three companies in the consortium is a Quebec government funded and owned corporation. So the government itself is a partner in this consortium, and they've announced plans and bought property to construct in Baie-Comeau a 200,000 ton per year battery anode manufacturing facility. Now, the reason they've chosen Baie-Comeau as the site for that is probably number one, its proximity to the very rich Tetepisca Graphite district, and two, it's uniquely positioned geographically to serve both the European and North American graphite markets, because Baie-Comeau is only about a week sailing time from Hamburg, Germany, and probably 5 or 6 days from Liverpool, England. And it also has ground transport links to the rest of North America and all the gigafactories. So it is perfectly positioned in that sense. And if you compare it to Mozambique, where there is some graphite, sailing time from Mozambique to Hamburg, Germany is 46 days. So it really is strategically a great place to be and a great place to have graphite. This is a map of the Tetepisca Graphite District. The rectangular boxes are mineral claims. And you can see the amount of land we're talking about here using the scale of kilometers. Now, the rectangular boxes outlined in dark gray and in red belong to E-Power. So E-Power is the largest mineral claim holder in the Tetepisca Graphite District. So, and the difference in the red and the gray is the red was the original property we took on, which we bought from some prospectors for actually a very low price. It does have a 2% royalty on it, meaning 2% of production really goes to the prospectors who sold it to us. The rest of it, outlined in gray, we acquired by staking. So for very little money, we've now got a massive land package in the richest graphite district in North America. One of the reasons graphite forms the anode material is it is extremely conductive of electricity. The other reason it's extremely heat resistant. But the conductivity is one of the things that helps us find it in the ground. And when we acquired this ground, we already knew that there were conductive bodies represented by the colors here on the map, conductive bodies beneath the surface, detected in surveys by private companies as well as the Quebec government itself. And we knew that at the surface in some places, on those conductive bodies, graphite had already been discovered and reported. So knowing where the conductive bodies lie on the ground, we can go there and walk the ground and really find places where the graphite protrudes the surface, looking for exploration targets. And you can see, again, some of the grades, meaning the percentage of the rock that is carbon as graphite. Some of the grades in surface samples taken here are very high, 27, 30, 16%, 59%, 21%. All very high grade stuff over conductive bodies extending for kilometers. This is another map showing the same thing, but a little bit more zoomed in. And those white patches represent, again, the conductivity in the ground. And the CG numbers, which means carbon as graphite, represent the graphite grades discovered at or very near surface there. Our exploration work before the summer of this year had narrowed us down to 5 different target areas on the property. And each of those 5 target areas is an area we believe has the potential to produce us a world-class graphite deposit. So we did a drill program this summer, and we would have loved to drill all 5 of those targets, but we had the budget to drill 3 of those targets and concentrated our drilling on target areas 4, 1, and 2. And the purpose of this drilling that we just did was to determine which of these 5 target areas, or at least which of those 3, is most likely to produce us a easy world-class graphite deposit. And by easy, I mean easy to mine, generally near surface, easy to access, and so forth. We're looking for the low-hanging fruit here. So this summer, we just finished the drill program on September the 20th. And you can see we drilled in target number 2, which is 6.8 kilometers long. We drilled 7 holes, target 1, 5, target 4, 4 holes. And we also, while we were out there, this block of claims up here, which is called, for some reason, the Capitan Cosmos claims, that area is an area that we've staked a while back, but we actually never visited. So while we were out there, we went there too and did some prospecting and mapping and brought with us a man-portable drill and drilled about 12 meters of holes into some obvious graphite targets where you're seeing graphite right there on the surface. So we were able to drill 18 holes for 2,651 meters, plus 6 man-portable drills, which is only about 20 meters, but easy to maneuver. And we've sent for analysis to ALS Global in Val-d'Or 639 samples for carbon as graphite analyses. I'll go to the next slide. So the plan is when we get the carbon analyses back from the lab. Now, I don't know exactly when that's going to be, but it could be any minute now. At least some of them should start to come in very soon. They haven't given us a date, but if I had to guess, around the 1st of the month, some of it will start to roll in. The plan is to then use that data to determine which of those target areas is going to be our target for resource delineation drilling, which is a much bigger program, somewhere between 20,000 and 25,000 meters. Now, we're also going to we're going to announce this very shortly, we're going to do some metallurgical test work on the graphite and to test it for recovery, composition, and flake size. And testing for recovery means how easy is it to separate the graphite from the rest of the rock and achieve purity, because batteries need purity. We also want to test the flake size distribution. That's not really something I've touched on yet, but I will now. All graphite is not necessarily created equal, so it's technically not a commodity because some is better than another. And there are 2 types of graphite. One type is called amorphous graphite, which is a powdery and oily substance. And you see it every day. It's actually the what you call the lead in a pencil. When you're writing with a pencil, you're really spreading amorphous graphite onto your paper. That graphite does not command a very high price. It is used in electric vehicle batteries, but the more desirable type of graphite, especially for performance in batteries, is flake graphite. And flake graphite, it commands a much higher price than amorphous graphite. And generally, the bigger your flake size, the better your price and the better performance you'll get in a battery. And the man holding the rock here in this picture, that is obvious flake graphite. If you're looking at amorphous, what you see is a black powdery substance. This has much more obvious flakes and has more the character of a rock rather than something you could just break apart in your hands. This is obvious flake graphite. And this area we work in, the Tetepisca Graphite District, is known for flake graphite. We haven't done much test work yet on determining the flake size of our graphite, but that's about to begin. And that will give us a better idea of what a graphite resource could actually be worth at today's graphite prices. Now I'm going to skip ahead to some corporate data here. One note about where we work. Quebec. Quebec is very supportive both of the battery industry as well as the minerals exploration industry. And the part of Quebec in which we work, the government actually gives us an exploration, they call it a credit or a tax credit, but it's actually a rebate. They give us cash. So if we put $1 million, for example, into what they call qualifying geological expenses, the Quebec government will give us 35% of that back. So we're essentially in a subsidized industry because we're in Quebec and they're very supportive of the minerals industry. So that really sums up, I guess, the project around e-Power, or the project, our flagship project. But what about the company itself? Well, we've worked very hard to keep our share structure very tight, our capital structure. And we currently have less than 27 million shares outstanding. And the stock sits right now, or at least a few minutes ago, at 6 cents per share, meaning our market cap is only $1.6 million roughly. And we have pending drill results coming out shortly. There are no options outstanding to hang on the stock price, which is, I think, extremely rare in the exploration business. And there are 2 million warrants at 60 cents, which is a long way from 6 cents. And there are 1.4 million warrants at 48 cents. So there is absolutely nothing hanging on the stock between 6 cents and 48 cents. So at the moment, investors, especially investors hearing about this company for the first time, have the opportunity to accumulate shares in an emerging graphite player with, the potential to have more than one world-class graphite deposit in a place strategically very convenient, and drill results are pending. So that pretty much sums up e-Power Resources. At the moment, I think we can open it up for questions if that'll work.
Great. Thank you, James. Very informative presentation. So we are now going to start the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please, reminder to everybody, you can type your questions into the chat box, and we already have a few, so let's get at it. James, nice tight share structure. Do you have any plans to graduate trading of the shares to the TSXV from the CSE, or perhaps list on the OTC markets in the US?
Not really. We like the CSE. It's much more streamlined and about, I think, half the cost of the TSXV. Now, there are some things we would like to do to make the stock more tradable. One of those is to get a QX listing in the US so that there can be a 5-letter symbol in the US and more Americans would be able to easily buy the shares. We also intend to list the company on the Frankfurt exchange, which used to be very easy, but is a little bit harder now. But we're in talks with somebody about doing that. And it doesn't cost very much money to do that. The U.S. listing, I'm told, is about $40,000. The Frankfurt listing is more like $10,000. So we do intend to take those steps to make the stock more tradable.
Yeah, certainly opens up to a wider market if you do that. So.
Yeah.
Okay, then now what is it about working in Quebec that attracted you to that province? Certainly that 35% cash back is certainly a draw.
Yeah, that helps for sure. But I guess the first thing that attracted us was just the presence of graphite. Quebec is endowed with lots of minerals, and it has a history of graphite production, but on the western side of the state rather than, or the province rather than where we are. But it has a history of graphite production around the Ottawa area, really, and has a history of supporting the minerals exploration business. And Quebec has a very interesting database, really. One of the reasons Quebec will support you by giving you 35% of what you spend in the ground is you have to share your results with the government, and those become publicly available. So that gives us really a vast library of all the exploration work done over the last 70 years, really. And it does make it harder to acquire something because everyone else can see that as well. But, if you're able to acquire it while nobody cares, which we were able to do at Tetepisca, you can pick up some claims, where you just pay the staking fee, which is, I think it's $64 per claim. So you can acquire a big piece of ground in a hot district for not so much money if you're doing it at the right time.
Yeah. Well, it goes both ways. Not only is it harder to acquire, but you learn from your neighbors and you understand what works for them, and that hopefully works for you as well. So
exactly, yeah. The second mouse gets the cheese. Yeah,
that's it. Now, Tetepisca, it's located within a high-grade graphite district, as you mentioned. Can you tell us who else surrounds you, and if you notice any similarities between what you're seeing on your project and what they have?
Yeah, we do see similarities. There are three companies surrounding us. One is Mason, which has a pretty large graphite resource and a reserve as well, a high-grade reserve of 27%. We do see a lot of similarities between what they have and what we have. Also nearby is Focus Graphite. Their project appears to be a little bit deeper, but otherwise does have a lot of similarities. And then very close to us is another company called Green Battery Minerals, who've delineated a small resource, which actually looks very much like our target area number 4, like very much. And so we're able to look at everything they've done, and they've done some good work and delineated a nice 17% graphite resource. So yeah, those are the three big ones in the area, and actually I can't think of anybody else in that area in graphite.
Yeah. Just wanted to point out that 75 million ton Lac Tetepisca deposit is not on your Tetepisca project area. That's
it's everybody loves that name for some reason, and they're it's the name of a lake in the area, and our property borders that lake. But theirs is like 25 or 30 kilometers away, but they still use that name for some reason. I think it's because they had some ground closer to the lake years ago and just kept the name. But yeah, they are different for sure.
Yeah, but it has a ring to it. So what is the standard output of a world-class graphite mine? And I guess this was answered by one of your earlier slides that showed about 56,000 tons was the average mine size. I know it's a little early for you, but how do you think e-Power will compare to that level?
Well, I think for sure there's potential for at least one of those, and maybe more. Like even, if we look at those target areas, target area number 2, for example, where we put 7 holes, is 6.8 kilometers long and maybe half a kilometer wide. That alone could be a real monster of a graphite deposit and could alone turn into a world-class graphite deposit. Now, our business model is not about building mines. We don't intend to have a $300 million CapEx and say, yes, the guys who found this are going to turn this into a process industry and keep cutting costs until we're the lowest cost producer. That's not going to be us. We're going to delineate and develop those resources in the ground so that we can sell them while they're still there and make it as turnkey as possible for a manufacturer who needs it to come in and take it.
Okay, so that's your end game, is essentially to sell off the projects, the resources. You're not going to risk a lot of capital yourself. You're not going to do any purification or any downstream processing yourself at all.
That's right.
Or even, it sounds like you're not even going to create the graphite con yourself. You want to sell
the graphite what? Sorry,
the graphite concentrate.
No, we don't intend to do that. I mean, we may do that just in a bulk sample or something, but we don't intend to do that. As part of our business model. That would be left to someone who's going to use the stuff to manufacture.
Okay, so high grade one thing, and you probably have some high grade there based on some of your neighbors, but not necessarily king for graphite projects. I think it's all about the quality of the product. When do you start determine flake size distribution or in situ purity for your projects, and what other tests do you think you need to run? Maybe battery tests, just to prove that this is a good quality product that can be produced by somebody else.
Yeah, well, for flake size distribution, we intend to start that very shortly, very shortly, and also recovery testing very shortly, and which is what's going to tell us if we're able to get the purity we need to sell to the battery market, and there can be, it could be that one little place on the property, maybe you can't get the right purity, but the rest of the property you can. We don't really know yet, but we do know that when we look at the material, it's clearly got excellent flake size to it. And I can even share my screen and just show a few photos. I can't really show drill cores because we haven't press released anything, but I could show a few photos up close of some flake graphite. Shall I do that?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead. Just take a moment. Okay. Here we go. Like that. Can you see that?
Yep, I can see that.
Okay. Yeah. And if you look, that is a piece of graphitic rock, and that's a Canadian 25-cent piece on it. If you look closely like that, you can see the visible flakes. And the reason I'm told that flake graphite is better than amorphous for batteries is that because the flakes are bigger, the electrical charge will remain inside the flake longer and have to transition from flake to flake less often. So if you're in a powdery substance, you're always transitioning from one piece to another. And here again, you can see the flake size and there. And yeah, that's just a picture of the man portable drill. And so I'll unshare my screen now, and just wanted to show that it's a nice look at the flake size. Like you can look at that and know it's the right stuff. But we're going to do testing on it to see what percentage of it appears to be flake, and there's going to be some amorphous in there too.
Yeah, and have you completed all the geophysics required to essentially prepare your drill targets on each of the projects?
We have, yes. Yeah. And okay. Some of it was done for us before we ever got here. And we got the results from the Quebec database.
Mm-hmm. And is it electromag that works the best for you? What?
Well, I'm not familiar with all the geophysical methods, but we've done some ground geophysics in one place, but most of it occurs aerial. And is used at the VTEM survey, used to detect the conductivity in the ground.
Yep.
And then we match that up with on the ground geochemistry by taking samples where the graphite protrudes the surface.
Right. Okay. When do you anticipate seeing assays from your recent drill program?
I'm hoping around the 1st of the month, but it really could be any minute that we start to get some. They won't give us a date, but given how long they've been there, it should be, could be next week, really.
And I guess a couple more corporate questions here. How much cash do you have right now? What's your remaining budget for this year and plans for next year?
Yeah, we've probably got $500,000 left at the moment in cash. But a lot of that is getting spent on exploration and will be spent on metallurgical testing as well. So, we're gonna run through that budget pretty soon. So we do intend to do a private placement pretty soon. It's a shame the share price is at 6 cents. So we might want to do a smaller one, hopefully followed by drill results, which maybe cause a higher share price, and then we could do yet another private placement, hopefully at a higher price and dilute less.
Yeah. Any idea why your share price is down at 6 cents since you started trading on the CSE?
No, not really. Looking at some of our peers, that their share price has been hammered too. Ours may have been hammered more. Now it opened when we first started trading. It opened around $1, which was probably at the time a little bit too high. Then it settled for a while around the 50-cent range, and in recent weeks has just gone down, down, down. All the private placements we've done are now out of the 4-month hold period. So there's not that looming over the stock either. And there was some flow through money raised during the year. I think we probably raised about about $1 million of flow through, but at much higher prices than now, or prices like 10 times what it is now, or 5 times. And so a lot of that flow through may already be out of the system, meaning it's been sold already. And that there's nothing hanging on stock. There are no options out there, and the only warrants outstanding are well out of the money, at the lowest ones at 48 cents. So, any significant buying should drive the stock price much higher.
Yeah. Okay. Your chief expense right now, it likely was drilling and assays. Is that going to continue, or should we expect more on the met testing costs?
The met testing will come next. Yes. That'll be the next, large budget item. But that might get into 6 figures, but might not even be that high. So, we're going to be doing a private placement pretty soon to keep things rolling. Our resource delineation drilling might be 20 to 25,000 meters. So the question then becomes, do we do it all at once? If the share price is high and we're able to raise that kind of money, which might be 7 million Canadian, we would do it, but it may become a question of raising a smaller amount, getting some results with it, and then raising yet another amount to delineate the resource in stages. But our target is to have a graphite resource, a world-class one, 43101, or call it 2024.
Okay, so it sounds like you plan to get back to drilling pretty soon, and that drilling is going to be delineation drilling, not necessarily exploration drilling like you just finished.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We may throw a few exploration holes in there too, but it'll be more about resource delineation.
Okay. When will the next private placement be? You just mentioned you need to raise money.
Yeah, that'll be pretty soon. I don't have a date yet, but look for it, in the next maybe couple of weeks. There's a question here. I'm not sure if you can see it, Dave, or if only I can see it, but one of our investors was looking for an answer about the potential of Tetepisca versus the world-class mine benchmark. And the answer there is...
Yeah, I did ask that question. It's hard to do when you're pre-resource, right? So
but each of those target areas at least has the potential to be a world-class graphite deposit and ultimately graphite mine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. And I think that's all you can say at this point because, forward-looking statements being what they are. So,
yes.
Maybe just to wrap it up here, do you anticipate North American graphite to stay in North America? I think the project here, it is close to Tidewater. It does have easy access to the European market, but I think the graphite's really just going to stay close to home. You talked about an Ontario plant here, and I'm sure Quebec is busy. I know Quebec is busy building their own.
Yeah, I'd say it's quite likely a lot of it will stay home, especially if we're going to have that 200,000 ton per year anode material manufacturer built in Baie-Comeau, Quebec. We're right in the back garden of Baie-Comeau. But I imagine European manufacturers will be bidding on graphite as well. And graphite coming from, northeastern Quebec is pretty convenient for them too. We've also had Korean companies reach out in a minor way. Hasn't really gone very far yet, but Korean companies seem to keep an eye on what we're doing, even though Korea is pretty far from where we are.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much. James from ePower Resources, thank you for joining us today.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Hey, thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. Reminder that Red Cloud Securities, we will be back on Monday afternoon when Taylor sits down with Black Wolf Copper and Gold. So that's October 31st at 2 p.m. Eastern. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much.